The planet below was dying. Orange flames spread across the cities of New Haven like a disease. From the bridge of the warship Indomitable, Captain Minho watched the evacuation ships flee into deep space, small dots of light against the darkness carrying families, children, everyone they could save. He counted them. 43 ships. Not enough. Never enough. Captain, they're here. Minho turned to face the main view screen. His stomach dropped. 12 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace, each one 3 times the size of the Indomitable. Their hulls were dark metal, covered in strange symbols that glowed red. The Tal Empire had arrived. The bridge crew went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. The Indomitable was alone. The rest of the human fleet was scattered across 5 star systems, fighting their own desperate battles. No reinforcements were coming. Lieutenant Hana stood at her weapons station, her hands steady on the controls. She had joined the military after the Empire destroyed her home colony. She lost her parents, her brother, everyone. That was 3 years ago. She never forgot. 12 ships, she said quietly. We're outgunned by at least 50 to 1. Noted, Minho replied. He sat down in his command chair and straightened his uniform. If these were his last moments, he would face them properly. The communications panel beeped. An incoming message from the enemy fleet. Minho nodded to the comm officer. A face appeared on the screen. The Tal commander was tall, with silver skin and 4 eyes that glowed like embers. He wore armor that seemed to absorb the light around it. When he spoke, his voice was cold and flat. Human vessel, this is Commander Vect of the 7th Fleet. You have fought bravely, but this ends now. Power down your weapons. Surrender your ship. Your crew will be treated according to the laws of war. Minho stood up slowly. He walked closer to the view screen, close enough to see every detail of the alien commander's face. No. The word hung in the air. Behind Minho, the bridge crew straightened in their chairs. Hana's fingers moved to her targeting controls. Commander Vect's 4 eyes narrowed. You refuse? Look at your ship, human. Look at mine. You cannot win. This is not courage. This is stupidity, Minho smiled. It was not a happy smile. Maybe, but here's what I know. Those evacuation ships need 30 more minutes to reach the jump point, 30 minutes to escape your fleet. So no, Commander, I will not surrender. Not today. He turned to his crew. Hana, target their flagship. All weapons. Yes, sir. Hana's voice was strong and clear. Jiho, prepare for combat maneuvers. At the helm, young pilot Jiho cracked his knuckles. He was only 22 years old, the youngest bridge officer by 5 years. But his hands moved across the controls like a musician playing an instrument. Ready, Captain. Just say when. Doyen, I need everything you can give me. Deep in the engineering section, Engineer Doyen heard the captain's voice through the intercom. He was already moving, running between consoles, checking power levels and shield generators. His team worked around him, making adjustments, preparing for battle. You'll have it, Captain. Doyen called back. She's old, but she's tough. In the medical bay, Dr. Yuna prepared for casualties. She set up surgical equipment and organized medicine. But part of her mind was elsewhere. She had been studying the Tal ships for months, analyzing every battle report, every scan. There was something about their shields, some pattern she couldn't quite understand. Not yet. On the view screen, Commander Vect's expression changed. Something like respect appeared in his burning eyes. Very well, human. Die with honor, then. The transmission ended. Here they come, shouted the sensor officer. The Tal fleet moved forward. All 12 ships, their weapons charging with a red glow that lit up space itself. Jiho, get us moving. Pattern Delta 7, copy that. The Indomitable surged forward. Its engines burned bright blue as Jiho sent the ship into a sharp dive, angling away from the planet. The Tal ships adjusted their course, following. Firing. Hana pressed the controls. The Indomitable's main cannons erupted with brilliant white light. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the shields of the nearest Tal battlecruiser. The enemy shields flared bright but held. No damage. Then the Empire fired back. It was like being hit by a tsunami. 12 ships, hundreds of weapons, all firing at once. The Indomitable's shields lit up like a star, absorbing hit after hit. The ship shook violently. Consoles sparked. The lights flickered. Shields at 60%. Someone shouted, "Hull breach on Deck 4. Casualties in Section 7. Minho gripped his chair as the ship bucked beneath him. Seal the breaches. Hana, keep firing! Jiho evasive pattern. The young pilot's hands flew across his controls. The Indomitable twisted and turned. dodging some shots, taking others on the stronger parts of its shields. But there were too many. For every shot they dodged, 3 more found their target, shields at 40%. Another volley. The ship screamed as energy tore through its hull. An explosion ripped through Deck 7. The medical bay shook and Yuna grabbed the edge of a table to stay standing. "Captain, we can't take much more of this," the first officer called out. Minho's mind raced. They had bought 12 minutes. Not enough. The evacuation ships needed 18 more. He looked at the view screen, at the debris field of a shattered moon floating nearby. Thousands of pieces of rock and metal, the remains of mining stations and destroyed ships. An idea formed. Crazy, desperate, perfect. "Jiho, see that debris field?" The pilot looked at his sensors. His eyes went wide. "Yes, sir. But Captain, there's no way through that. The gaps are too small. The sensors can't map a safe path." "Then don't use the sensors. Use your hands. Your instincts. Can you do it?" Jiho was quiet for just a moment. Then he grinned. "Yes, sir. I can do it. Then take us in. Full speed." "Full speed? But Captain, do it." "Hana, cease fire. Conserve ammunition. Everyone brace for impact." The Indomitable turned sharply and raced toward the debris field. Behind them, the Tal fleet followed, their weapons still firing. Shots streaked past the human ship, some hitting pieces of debris and vaporizing them. And then they entered the field. Jiho's hands moved faster than thought. The ship twisted, turned, dove, rose. Chunks of rock the size of buildings rushed past the view screen. Metal fragments pinged off the hull. The ship grazed one asteroid, setting off alarms throughout the ship. "Stay on course," Minho ordered. Deeper into the field they went. The darkness swallowed them. The Tal ship stopped at the edge, their sensors unable to track the human vessel through all the debris and metal. On the enemy flagship, Commander Vecht stared at his screens. "They've disappeared. Shall we pursue, Commander?" Vecht considered. He looked at the dense field of wreckage. "No, surround the field. They will have to come out eventually. They cannot hide forever. When they emerge, we will destroy them." Inside the debris field, the Indomitable drifted in darkness. Minho had ordered minimal power to avoid detection. The bridge was lit only by emergency lights. "Status report," Minho said quietly. "Shields at 28%. Hull breaches on 3 decks. We have 17 confirmed casualties." The first officer's voice was grim. Minho closed his eyes. 17 people. 17 families that would receive letters. He pushed the pain aside. "Mourn later. Survive now. How much time did we buy?" 19 minutes since we engaged. The evacuation ship should reach the jump point in 11 more minutes. 11 minutes. They had to stay hidden for 11 more minutes. Then the civilians would be safe. But Minho looked at his damaged ship, at his tired crew, and he knew the truth. They weren't going to run. They couldn't outrun 12 warships. When those 11 minutes were up, they would still be trapped. Unless they did something unexpected. Something impossible. He smiled in the darkness. "Doyen, get up here. Hana, pull up everything we know about Tal fleet formations. Yuna, I need your research on their shield technology." The crew looked at their captain. They saw his smile and understood. They weren't planning to escape. They were planning to attack. The cold was getting worse. With power diverted to essential systems only, the temperature inside the Indomitable dropped steadily. The crew worked in their heavy jackets, their breath forming small clouds in the air. Engineer Doyen stood in the bridge, looking at a holographic display of the ship. Red markers showed damaged sections. There were too many. He rubbed his tired eyes and focused on what Minho was saying. "We need more firepower. The weapons we have now barely scratch their shields." "Ideas?" Doyen thought for a moment. Then he pulled up a map of the debris field around them. "Captain, this field is full of destroyed ships. Human ships, alien ships, old mining vessels. All of them have weapons, power cores, everything we need. If we can salvage parts and attach them to our hull..." "How long would that take?" Minho asked. 4 hours. "Maybe 5. We'd need teams outside working in zero gravity. It's dangerous, but possible." Hana was studying her tactical display. Her broken arm hung in a makeshift sling, but her good hand moved across the controls. "Captain, I've been analyzing their formation. The Tal ships are positioned in a defensive sphere around the debris field. 3 ships maintain overlapping shield coverage on the eastern quadrant, but there's a problem with their positioning." She brought up a simulation on the main screen. The crew watched as the 3 Tal ships rotated slowly. their shields creating a protective barrier. See here? When they rotate to adjust for drift, there's a gap, just for 1.4 seconds. It's small, but if we're fast enough, we could break through. 1.4 seconds, Minho repeated. Jiho, can you hit that window? The young pilot nodded without hesitation. If I can't, no one can, sir. Dr. Yuna's voice came through the intercom. Captain, I need to show you something. I'm sending data to your screen now. A wave pattern appeared on the display. It showed the energy signature of Tal shields during the battle. Yuna continued. I've been studying every scan we took. The Tal shields operate on a resonance frequency, like a tuning fork. All their ships use the same frequency. If we could modify our weapons to match that frequency, we might be able to penetrate their shields. The bridge went quiet. Everyone understood what this meant. Can we do it? Minho asked. Can we modify our weapons? Doyen studied the data. Yes, if we combine the salvaged weapons with frequency modulators, yes, it would take time, but we could do it. Minho looked at the countdown on his screen. The evacuation ships had 8 more minutes until they reached safety. After that, the Indomitable's job of being a distraction was done. They could run, try to escape into deep space, but they wouldn't make it. Not with a damaged ship against 12 fresh enemy vessels. Running meant dying slowly over hours or days as the Tal fleet hunted them down, or they could fight. Really fight. One last attack with everything they had. Do it, Minho said. Doyen, take whoever you need. Get those weapons installed. Yuna, work with the weapons team to modify our firing systems. Hana, you have 4 hours to find every weakness in their formation. Jiho, rest. You're going to need your strength. Sir, I can help. Rest, that's an order. When the time comes, your flying is going to keep us alive. The crew moved into action. Doyen gathered his engineering teams and explained the plan. Minutes later, the first teams were suiting up for zero-gravity work outside the ship. Through the external cameras, Minho watched his crew float out into the debris field. They carried cutting tools, magnetic clamps, and power cables. They moved like insects across the surface of the Indomitable, crawling toward nearby wreckage. In the cold vacuum of space, Engineer Doyen led his team to a destroyed frigate. The ship had been torn in half by weapons fire, but its forward cannons were still intact. Doyen attached magnetic boots to the hull and walked across the dead ship like a ghost visiting a grave. Careful, he said over the radio. Test every connection before you cut. One spark could give away our position. The work was slow and dangerous. They had to cut away weapon systems without creating any energy signature that might alert the Tal sensors. They used hand tools when possible, mechanical cutters that produced no electromagnetic radiation. Hours passed. One weapon was removed, then another. They carried them through space, towing them on cables back to the Indomitable. The engineering crew worked on the hull, creating mounting points, running power lines through damaged corridors. Inside the ship, Yuna worked in a small laboratory, her fingers flying across multiple keyboards. She had to calculate the exact frequency needed to penetrate Tal shields. Too high and the weapons would have no effect. Too low and they would bounce off harmlessly. It had to be perfect. She ran simulation after simulation. Failed, tried again, failed. The numbers didn't work. She wanted to scream, to throw something, but she kept trying. Somewhere in the data was the answer. It had to be there. On the bridge, Hana reviewed every scan of the Tal formation. She built a 3-dimensional model in the tactical computer and ran attack scenarios. Each one ended in the Indomitable's destruction. The enemy fleet was positioned too well. Their shields were too strong. Their firepower too overwhelming. But she kept looking. Every system had a weakness. Every formation had a flaw. She just had to find it. An alert sounded on Hana's console. The evacuation ships had reached the jump point. They were entering hyperspace, disappearing to safety. They had done it. The civilians were saved. Hana allowed herself a small smile. Whatever happened next, they had succeeded in their mission, she informed the captain. Minho nodded. Good. Now we can focus on our own survival. But his tone suggested he wasn't thinking about survival. He was thinking about revenge. 3 hours into the salvage operation, disaster almost struck. One of Doyen's engineers accidentally activated a power cell while disconnecting it from a destroyed ship. The cell discharged with a bright flash of energy. Shut it down! Shut it down! Doyen shouted over the radio. They managed to kill the power cell, but the damage was done. The energy flash had been visible. Inside the TAL flagship, a sensor officer noticed the anomaly. Commander Vecht, we detected an energy spike in Sector 7 of the debris field. What kind of spike? Small, sir. Possibly a power cell or a weapon system. Vecht stared at the location on his screen. The humans were still in there somewhere in all that wreckage, hiding, waiting, but waiting for what? Send 2 ships to investigate, slowly, full sensor sweeps. If they're hiding something, I want to know what it is. 2 TAL battle cruisers broke formation and began moving toward the debris field. On the Indomitable, alarms sounded. Captain! 2 enemy ships approaching our position. Mino cursed under his breath. Get our people back inside, now! Doyen and his team abandoned their work and rushed back to the ship. They pulled themselves through space, kicking off debris, swimming through the vacuum. The TAL ships were getting closer. Their powerful sensors were active, searching, probing the darkness. The last engineer reached the airlock just as the TAL ships entered the outer edge of the debris field. The airlock door sealed. Doyen collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. Did they see us? Mino asked. The sensor officer studied his screens. Unknown, sir. They're doing slow sweeps. If we stay quiet, they might pass us by. Everyone on the bridge held their breath. The 2 TAL ships moved through the field like sharks hunting in murky water. They came within 2 kilometers of the Indomitable's position, then 1 kilometer, then 500 meters. Minho's hand hovered over the weapons control. If they were discovered now, they would have to fight without preparation, without the modifications, without any chance of winning. The TAL ships stopped. They scanned the area thoroughly. Then slowly they began to move away. They're leaving, the sensor officer whispered. The TAL ships rejoined the formation. Inside the enemy flagship, the sensor officer reported to Commander Vecht. The energy spike appears to have been a natural discharge, sir. Old power cells floating in the debris. We found no sign of the human ship. Vecht nodded. Maintain the blockade. They're still in there. Back on the Indomitable, the crew breathed again. Doyen looked at his teams. 2 engineers had injured themselves in the rush to return. Minor wounds, but painful. They had been lucky. A few more seconds and they would have been discovered. Status report, Minho ordered. Doyen checked his datapad. We recovered 4 heavy cannons and 6 missile tubes. Installation is 70% complete. I need 2 more hours. Yuna? The doctor's voice came through, tired but excited. I found it, Captain. The frequency. I know exactly how to tune our weapons. Hana? I have a plan, sir. It's going to require perfect timing and flying. That should be impossible. But there's a chance. A small one. Minho looked around his bridge at his exhausted, injured crew. They had been through hell. They were cold, tired, and scared. But they were still working. Still fighting. 2 more hours, he said. Then we show the Empire what humans can do. In the darkness of the debris field, the Indomitable waited. Its crew worked frantically, making final preparations. Weapons were loaded. Systems were tested. Everyone found their stations. Doyen welded the last cannon into place himself, his hands steady despite his exhaustion. Yuna uploaded her frequency modifications to the weapons computer. Hana finalized the attack pattern, checking every calculation 3 times. The Indomitable burst from the debris field like a missile launched from hell. Every engine burned at maximum power, leaving a trail of blue fire across the darkness of space. Jiho's hands moved across his controls, guiding the ship directly toward the heart of the TAL formation. On the enemy flagship, alarms screamed. Commander Vecht jumped from his command chair. The human ship! It's attacking! Impossible, someone said. They should be fleeing, not all ships open fire. Destroy them. But the Indomitable was already among them. Hana's fingers danced across her weapons console. Firing! Every weapon on the ship fired at once. The salvaged cannons, the modified missiles, everything they had. But this time, the weapons had been tuned to the exact frequency that Yuna had discovered. The energy beams that left the Indomitable weren't the normal white. They pulsed with a strange purple light. The beams struck the nearest TAL battlecruiser's shields. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the shields flickered and collapsed, overloaded by the resonance frequency. The purple energy tore through the hull like paper. Explosions erupted along the battlecruiser's spine. Its reactor went critical. The TAL ship exploded in a massive fireball that lit up the entire battle space. First kill, Hana shouted. Target the next one! But the Empire wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. The remaining 11 ships scattered and began coordinating their fire. The space around the Indomitable became a storm of red energy beams, missiles, and plasma bolts. "Evasive," Minho ordered. Jiho didn't need to be told twice. His hands moved faster than thought itself. The Indomitable twisted, dove, rolled. A missile passed so close to the bridge that everyone could see the details of its warhead through the view screen. It missed by meters, but there were too many shots. The Indomitable's shields, already damaged from the first battle, began taking hits. Red alerts flashed across every console. Shields failing. "Hull breach on Deck 9. Fire suppression systems offline." The first energy beam that made it through the shields hit the port side. Armor plating vaporized instantly. The explosion killed 6 people in the crew quarters. The ship shuddered like a wounded animal. Another hit. Then another. The bridge filled with smoke. Sparks erupted from damaged consoles. The lights flickered and went out, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. Hana's weapons station exploded in her face. She was thrown backward, her head hitting the deck hard. Blood ran from a cut above her eye. Her broken arm screamed with pain. For a moment she couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't think. Then training took over. She dragged herself back to her station with her good arm, blinking blood out of her eyes. The console was half destroyed, but the targeting computer still worked. She could still fight. "Target locked," she called out, her voice hoarse.
"Firing!"
Another Tau ship took the purple beams through its shields. This one didn't explode immediately. Instead, it began to spin out of control, trailing debris and frozen atmosphere. But then a massive blast hit the engineering section. The explosion tore through 3 decks at once. Soyen was thrown against a bulkhead. Around him, consoles exploded. Pipes burst, spraying coolant. The emergency lights went out, leaving only the glow of fires. "Hull breach. Major hull breach in engineering." Doyen heard screaming. He saw one of his engineers get sucked toward a hole in the hull, pulled by the escaping atmosphere. He grabbed the man's arm just in time, holding on with all his strength. Another engineer helped him, and together they pulled their friend back from death. "Seal that breach. Emergency force fields," Doyen shouted. His voice was raw. He tasted blood in his mouth. The force field activated, stopping the air from escaping, but half of engineering was exposed to space. Doyen counted his people. 12 engineers had been in this section. He could only find 7 now. 5 were gone. 5 friends, 5 skilled workers, 5 lives ended in an instant. Tears ran down his face, freezing in the cold air. But he couldn't stop. Couldn't mourn, not yet. He wiped his eyes and moved to the main power console. It was damaged but working. He began rerouting power, trying to keep the ship alive just a little longer. Another direct hit shook the entire ship. A support beam fell from the ceiling, crushing a console. Sparks showered down like rain. The ship was dying. They all knew it. But they kept fighting. In the medical bay, Dr. Yuna had her own battle. Wounded crew members kept arriving. Burns, broken bones, cuts, concussions. She worked with a team of nurses, moving from patient to patient, doing what she could. But there were too many. They ran out of beds and started laying people on the floor. A particularly bad explosion sent injured people flooding in. A young technician with burns covering half his body. A pilot with a piece of metal embedded in his chest. A weapons officer who couldn't stop coughing up blood. Yuna's hands moved on instinct. Stabilize, stop the bleeding. Keep them breathing. One after another. She didn't think. Thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant breaking down. She just worked. But in the back of her mind, she remembered why she was here. She remembered the day the Empire came to her home colony. She remembered the ships burning in the sky. She remembered searching through rubble for survivors. This was her revenge, her way of fighting back. If she died today, at least she died fighting. On the bridge, things were getting desperate. The command chair had been torn away by a near miss. Captain Minho stood instead, gripping a damaged railing for support. Blood ran down his face from a head wound, but he ignored it. "Jiho, bring us around. Hana, target that cluster of 3 ships. Sir, the weapons are overheating." "If we keep firing at this rate, fire anyway." The Indomitable twisted through space, dodging and weaving through the storm of enemy fire. Jiho was performing maneuvers that shouldn't be possible. He wasn't flying the ship so much as dancing with it, feeling its movements, predicting where the enemy shots would be before they fired. But even his skill had limits. A plasma torpedo got through, hitting the starboard engine. The explosion was massive. The ship spun wildly. Everyone on the bridge was thrown from their stations. Jiho fought with his controls, trying to stabilize. I've lost engine 3. Trying to compensate. Keep us in the fight. Yes, sir. Another Tal battlecruiser fell. Hana had managed to put 3 shots through a weak point in its shields. The ship broke apart, spilling debris and frozen bodies into space. 3 enemy ships down. 9 remaining. But the Indomitable was falling apart. Primary power was failing. Life support was offline in half the ship. They were running on emergency batteries and pure determination. Commander Vecht watched the battle from his flagship with growing disbelief. The human ship should have been destroyed minutes ago. It was outnumbered, outgunned, heavily damaged. Yet it kept fighting. It had destroyed 3 of his ships and damaged 2 others. What kind of species was this? What kind of madness drove them? All ships focus fire on the human vessel. I want it destroyed now. The 9 remaining Tal ships coordinated their attack. Every weapon turned toward the Indomitable. The amount of firepower was enough to level a city. It all converged on the single human warship. Multiple target locks, the sensor officer shouted. They're all targeting us. Minho saw the red beams converging on his ship. This was it. The killing blow. There was no dodging this much firepower. No escaping. He looked at his crew. At Hana, still fighting with one arm. At Jiho, his young face determined despite the fear in his eyes. At the sensor officers, the communications team. Everyone who had given everything for this moment. It's been an honor, Minho said quietly. The Tal fleet fired. The combined power of 9 battlecruisers turned space itself into fire. The energy beams were so bright they hurt to look at. But Jiho had one more miracle in him. At the last possible second, he found a gap in the enemy formation, a space so small that the ship's computer said it was impossible to fly through. But Jiho wasn't using the computer. He was using instinct and desperation. The Indomitable shot forward like a bullet. It passed between 2 Tal ships with less than 10 meters of clearance on either side. The enemy shots, aimed at where the Indomitable should have been, instead hit the Tal ships themselves. 2 enemy battlecruisers, caught by their own fleet's weapons, exploded in massive fireballs. The bridge crew stared in shock. They were alive. Somehow, impossibly, they were still alive. Did we just... Someone started to say. Don't celebrate yet, Minho ordered. 7 ships left. Hana, keep firing. Jiho, get us close to their flagship. Their flagship, sir? You heard me. If we're going down, we're taking their commander with us. Doyen's voice crackled over the intercom, weak and pained. Captain, I can't keep the engines running much longer. Primary power is almost gone. We have maybe 5 more minutes. Then give me 5 minutes of hell, Doyen. Make every second count. Aye, sir. The Indomitable charged toward the enemy flagship. It was the largest ship in the Tal fleet, bristling with weapons. Its shields were still at full strength. It was a fortress in space, and the Indomitable, broken and burning, flew straight at it. Hana fired everything they had left. Missiles, energy beams, railgun rounds, everything. Most shots bounced off the flagship's powerful shields. But a few got through, scarring the hull, damaging weapons ports. The flagship returned fire with devastating precision. A beam struck the bridge, cutting through the ceiling. The collision happened in slow motion. The Indomitable's forward hull met the Tal flagship's shields first. The shields were powerful, designed to stop energy weapons and missiles. But nothing could stop 5,000 tons of metal and humanity's rage moving at combat speed. The shields held for 3 seconds. They flared brilliant white, trying to absorb and redirect the kinetic energy. Warning alarms screamed throughout the enemy flagship. Tal crew members grabbed onto anything they could as their ship began to shake. Then the shields collapsed. They shattered like glass, overloaded beyond their design limits. The Indomitable punched through and hit the hull. The sound was tremendous, a grinding crash that seemed to shake space itself. Metal tore. Hull plating crumpled. The human warship drove deep into the heart of the Tal flagship like a spear through armor. On the bridge of the Indomitable, everything was chaos. The impact threw everyone forward. Jiho's head hit his console, leaving him dazed. Hana was thrown across the room, landing hard on her injured arm. The pain made her scream, but the sound was lost in the noise of tearing metal and explosions. Captain Minho held onto the railing with both hands, his knuckles white. He felt the ship shudder and groan around him. He felt it dying. The main view screen was dead, showing only static. Emergency lights flickered. The air smelled like burning electronics and coolant. Damage report. He tried to shout, but his voice was weak. He tasted blood. No one answered. Half the bridge crew was unconscious or worse. The other half was trying to understand what had just happened. Deep in engineering, Doyen lay on the floor. A fallen support beam had missed, crushing him by inches. Around him, his section was completely destroyed. Every console was dead. Fires burned everywhere. The hull had multiple breaches, and only the emergency force fields kept them from being sucked into space. He pulled himself up slowly, checking his body for injuries, bruises, cuts. His left leg hurt badly, maybe broken, but he was alive. He looked around for his team. "Sound off," he croaked. "Who's still here?" 3 voices answered. Out of the 7 who had survived the battle, only 4 remained. 3 had died in the impact. Doyen wanted to cry, wanted to scream, but there was no time. The ship was still dying around them. He limped to the main power console. It was barely functioning. The screen cracked and flickering, but it showed him the truth. The reactor was going critical. The collision had damaged the containment fields. In approximately 4 minutes, the Indomitable's reactor would explode, and they were still connected to the enemy flagship. When the Indomitable exploded, it would take the TAL ship with it. Doyen smiled grimly. At least they would die completing their mission. He activated his communicator. "Captain, this is engineering. The reactor is going critical. 4 minutes until detonation." On the bridge, Minho heard the message. He looked at his dying ship, at his wounded crew. 4 minutes. Everyone on this ship would be dead in 4 minutes. "Understood, Doyen. Good work." His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "All hands, this is the captain. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. That's an order." Hana pulled herself up using a damaged console. Her good arm shook with effort. "Captain, the escape pods were destroyed in the battle. There's no way off the ship." The bridge went silent. Everyone understood now. There was no escape. No last-minute rescue. This was the end. Jiho wiped blood from his eyes and looked at his captain. The young pilot's hands had stopped shaking. He was calm now, accepting. "Sir, it was an honor." "The honor was mine, Jiho." Across the bridge, the remaining crew members stood or sat at their stations. They looked at each other. These people who had fought together, survived together, and would now die together. No one spoke. Words weren't needed. In the medical bay, Dr. Yuna heard the captain's message. She looked at the wounded crew members lying on the floor, too injured to move. She couldn't save them. She couldn't save anyone, not even herself. She sat down on the floor next to a young technician who was unconscious, his breathing shallow. She held his hand and waited for the end. But she had one last task. Her personal computer was still working. She pulled it out and accessed her research files. Everything she had learned about the TAL shields, all her calculations, all her data. This information could save lives in future battles. It could help humanity win this war. With shaking fingers, she began broadcasting her research on all frequencies. She sent it to every human ship in range, to every colony, to every station. Even if she died, her work would live on. Broadcasting complete, she whispered to herself. Someone will use this. Someone will make it count. On the enemy flagship, Commander Vecht was experiencing his own nightmare. The human ship had buried itself deep in his vessel's hull. Dozens of compartments were exposed to space. Hundreds of his crew were dead. His ship, his pride, was dying. "Get me a damage report," he screamed at his officers. "Commander, the human ship's reactor is going critical. When it explodes, I know what will happen. Separate the ship. Cut it free. Use the emergency charges." The TAL crew rushed to comply. They activated explosive bolts designed to separate damaged sections of the hull. But the Indomitable was embedded too deeply. The bolts fired, but the human ship remained stuck. "It's not working, Commander." Vecht stared at the tactical display. 3 minutes until the explosion. His entire flagship, the pride of the 7th Fleet, would be destroyed. All because of one small human warship that refused to die. He thought about his long career, the worlds he had conquered, the battles he had won, and now at the end defeated by a species the Empire considered primitive. All crew abandon ship. Get to the evacuation craft, move. His voice was bitter but resigned. He had lost. Back on the Indomitable, Captain Minho walked slowly through the damaged bridge. He stopped at each station, at each member of his crew. He put his hand on their shoulders, looked them in the eyes. No words were spoken, but everything was said. When he reached Hana's station, she stood at attention despite her injuries. "Captain, I just want to say, you were the best weapons officer I ever had, Hana. Your family would be proud." Tears ran down her face. "Thank you, sir." He moved to Jiho's station. The young pilot managed a weak smile. Did I do okay, Captain? The flying? You were magnificent, son. The finest pilot in the fleet. Minho returned to his position in the center of the bridge. He stood straight, ignoring his wounds, his pain. Everything except this final moment with his crew. I want you all to know, he said, that serving with you has been the greatest honor of my life. We may die here, but we die as humans. We die fighting, and we take the Empire's best ship with us. That's something to be proud of. The crew nodded. Some smiled. Others cried quietly. But no one looked afraid anymore. Doyen's voice came over the intercom one last time. Captain, 2 minutes. I'm sorry we couldn't give you more. You gave us everything, Doyen. Well done. Sir, press on? Minho smiled. Press on, engineer. Always press on. In engineering, Doyen looked at his 3 remaining team members. They were so young. They had their whole lives ahead of them, and now it was ending here in fire and darkness. Hey, he said to them, I'm proud to die with you. They gathered together, these 4 engineers who had kept an impossible ship running through an impossible battle. They held on to each other and waited. The reactor countdown continued. 1 minute, 50 seconds, 40. Around the battlefield, the remaining 5 TAL ships retreated to a safe distance. They watched their flagship dying, watched evacuation craft fleeing from it like insects from a kicked nest. The human ship had won. Not by being stronger or having better weapons, but by refusing to surrender, by fighting past the point of reason, past the point of hope, to the very end. 30 seconds. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Jiho reached across his console and took Hana's hand. She squeezed back with her good hand. They didn't look at each other. They just held on, 20 seconds. Dr. Yuna closed her eyes and thought of home, of her childhood before the war, of sunny days and laughter, good memories to carry into the dark. 10 seconds. Captain Minho stood alone in the center of the bridge. He thought of all the battles he had fought, all the orders he had given, all the people he had lost. He thought of the evacuation ships they had saved. 43 ships full of families, children, future. It was worth it. 5 seconds. He straightened his uniform one last time and stood at attention. If death was coming, he would meet it properly. 3 seconds. Across the ship, every crew member made peace in their own way. Some prayed. Some thought of loved ones. Some simply breathed and accepted what was coming. 2 seconds. Minho opened the ship-wide channel one final time. He transmitted on all human frequencies, knowing that other ships would hear this eventually. His final words would reach across the stars. To all human forces, this is Captain Minho of the Indomitable. We fought, we pressed on. We never surrendered. Do the same. Whatever comes next, press on. Always press on. 1 second. The reactor breached containment. The explosion was like a newborn star. The Indomitable and the TAL flagship merged into a single point of pure white light that expanded outward at incredible speed. The blast wave hit the 5 retreating TAL ships, destroying 2 completely and crippling 3 more. The explosion was so bright it was visible from New Haven's surface, even in daylight. 3 months had passed since the Battle of New Haven. The debris field where the Indomitable and the TAL flagship had died was now a memorial. Human ships passing through the system always slowed down there, observing a moment of silence for the crew that had sacrificed everything. Far across the galaxy, in the heart of the TAL Empire, the ruling council gathered in their great chamber. The room was enormous, with walls that seemed to reach into infinity. 12 council members sat on raised thrones, their silver skin glowing in the dim light. They were discussing the human problem. The situation is growing worse, one council member said. His voice echoed in the chamber. We have lost 17 ships in the past month alone. The humans are using new tactics. Their weapons have been modified. They know our weaknesses now. Another council member, older and more decorated, spoke up. How is this possible? They are a young species. They have been spacefaring for less than 200 years. We have conquered the galaxy for 10,000 years, yet they defeat us. The words hung in the air like an accusation. No one wanted to say it, but everyone was thinking it. The Empire was losing to humanity, not quickly, not decisively, but steadily. Battle by battle, the balance was shifting. What happened at New Haven? A third council member asked. Give me the details. A military commander stepped forward. He activated a holographic display that showed the battle. The 12 TAL ships surrounding the debris field. The Indomitable's surprise attack. The destruction of the flagship. 1 human ship against 12 of ours, the commander said. They should have been annihilated in the first volley. Instead, they destroyed or damaged 7 vessels and killed one of our finest commanders. Their captain, a human named Minho, refused all offers of surrender. Foolish, someone muttered. No, not foolish. Strategic. The military commander enhanced the hologram to show the evacuation ships escaping. They knew they could not win. Their goal was not victory but time. They held our fleet in place long enough for their civilians to escape. Then they attacked not to win, but to do maximum damage before dying. The council chamber was silent. This was not how war was supposed to work. When faced with superior force, species surrendered. They negotiated. They accepted their place in the Empire's order. They did not fight to the death and take half your fleet with them. What about the shield frequency? An older council member asked. How did they discover it? A human scientist named Yuna. She analyzed our ships during previous battles and found the resonance pattern. Before she died, she broadcast her research to every human vessel in range. Now all their ships use modified weapons. Our shields are no longer the advantage they once were. Can we change the frequency? We are trying, but it requires refitting thousands of ships. It will take years. Meanwhile, the humans continue to attack using this knowledge. Another council member spoke, his voice heavy with concern. What is the casualty ratio? The military commander hesitated. For every human ship we destroy, we lose 2 of ours. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. This was impossible. The Empire's technology was superior in every way. Their ships were larger, their weapons more powerful, their armor thicker. Yet they were losing. How? Someone demanded. Explain this. The commander brought up more data. The humans do not fight like other species. They use unconventional tactics. They hide in debris fields and asteroid belts. They sacrifice damaged ships to ram ours. They refuse to retreat even when the battle is lost. They modify their weapons with whatever they can salvage. They are unpredictable, desperate, and utterly without fear. He paused and looked at the council members. They also learn faster than any species we have encountered. Every battle, every loss teaches them something new. They adapt immediately. What works against them once will never work again. Then we must destroy them completely, one council member said coldly. Send the Grand Fleet, eliminate every human world. Leave no survivors. The military commander shook his head. Respected council, we tried that approach with the Vroth species 2 centuries ago. It required 40% of our military force and took 15 years. The humans are spread across more territory than the Vroth were. They have more ships, more resources, more determination. A war of total annihilation would cost us everything. So what do you suggest? We negotiate with them? Show weakness? I suggest we remember why we are losing. It started with 1 battle, 1 ship. The Indomitable. He pulled up an image of the human warship. It was old, damaged, inferior in every way to TAL vessels. This ship should have meant nothing. But its sacrifice became a symbol for all humanity. They call it the spirit of the Indomitable. Every human ship now fights with the same determination. He showed more images. New human warships coming out of shipyards. Each one had a name painted on its hull in bold letters. HMS Minho, HMS Hana, HMS Doyen, HMS Yuna, HMS Jiho. They named their ships after the dead crew of the Indomitable. Every officer, every pilot, every engineer who served on that vessel is now remembered. Human children learn their names in school. Human soldiers swear oaths to honor their sacrifice. We did not just destroy 1 ship. We created martyrs. The council chamber was quiet. The truth was sinking in. The Empire had made a critical error. They had assumed that destroying human ships would break human spirit. Instead, it had forged that spirit into something unbreakable. Far from the TAL homeworld, on a rebuilt New Haven, a memorial ceremony was taking place. Thousands of people gathered around 5 statues that stood facing the stars. The statues showed the crew of the Indomitable in their final moments. Captain Minho standing tall and defiant, Lieutenant Hana at her weapons station, Engineer Doyen working on his console, Dr. Yuna tending to the wounded, Pilot Jiho at the helm. The inscription at the base read simply, "They pressed on." Young military cadets stood in formation before the memorial. They were preparing to ship out to the front lines. Each one touched the statues before leaving. a tradition that had developed in the months since the battle. A young woman, barely 20 years old, placed her hand on the statue of Hana. "I'll make you proud," she whispered. She was a weapons officer, just like Hana had been. She wore her uniform with pride and carried Hana's tactical manual in her bag. She had studied every battle Hana had fought, every decision she had made. Next to her, a young pilot touched Jiho's statue. He had watched the battle recordings 100 times, studying Jiho's impossible maneuvers. He practiced them in simulators until his instructors said he was ready. Now he would fly in real battles, and he would fly like Jiho had taught him. An engineering student knelt before Doyen's statue. She had read his personal logs, studied his modifications to the Indomitable. She understood now that being an engineer wasn't just about following procedures. It was about creativity, determination, and never giving up even when everything was falling apart. Across human space, this scene was repeated on every colony, every station, every military base. The crew of the Indomitable had become legends. Their story was told and retold. Children played games where they pretended to be Captain Minho standing on his bridge, refusing to surrender. Schools taught Yuna's scientific method. Engineers studied Doyun's improvised repairs. And most importantly, every human in uniform understood the message. When faced with impossible odds, you press on. The human fleet had changed too. New ships rolled out of shipyards, incorporating everything learned from the Indomitable's final battle. Weapons were tuned to the shield frequency. Hulls were reinforced in weak spots. Tactics were revised to favor aggressive, unpredictable attacks. But the biggest change was mental. Human crews no longer fought to survive. They fought to win. They took risks that made no logical sense. They turned defeats into victories through sheer determination. They scared the Tal Empire because they refused to behave like a conquered species. A human battle group jumped into a contested system. 5 human ships against 8 Tal vessels. By conventional military logic, the humans should retreat. Instead, they attacked immediately. They used the asteroid belt for cover, exactly as the Indomitable had used the debris field. They struck hard and fast, destroying 3 Tal ships before retreating. The Tal commander watching the battle couldn't understand it. The humans had won nothing. They still didn't control the system. But they had proven they could hurt the Empire anywhere, anytime. That fear was worth more than territory. Another battle, another system. A damaged human frigate was cornered by 2 Tal destroyers. The captain, a veteran named Somin, was given the chance to surrender. She laughed and said, "Did Captain Minho surrender? Did the Indomitable yield?" She rammed one destroyer and damaged the other badly enough that it had to retreat. Her crew died, but they died fighting, and that story spread throughout the fleet. The Empire learned that cornering a human ship didn't make it weaker. It made it more dangerous. Back in the Tal Council chamber, the discussion continued. They reviewed reports from every front. Every sector showed the same pattern. Human resistance was stiffening. Human attacks were increasing. Human morale was higher than ever. "We cannot win this war," the oldest council member finally said. The words were like poison, but they were true.